Chapter 5 Tree or Not a Tree? That's the Question. Summer of 2001, Long Island, New York. Three young half-bloods and a satyr trudged their way out of the woods toward a large hill in an empty section of Long Island. The oldest was a boy no older than 14. The satyr looked to be about the same age, while the first girl looked a few years younger, and the last girl and youngest of the group was no more than 7 or 8 years old. There was no sign of any civilization in the area, other than a sign off the road that read Delphi Strawberry Farm. On the trail of the three young demigods and satyr was a small army of monsters led by the three punishers of the underworld, Alecto, Tisiphone, and Megara, also known as the Furies. There were hellhounds, cyclopes, empusae, and a few other assorted species of monsters. As they reached the top of the hill, they became surrounded and were forced back to defend themselves as the group of monsters inched closer. The older girl seemed to be their main target, with little interest in the other three, other than maybe as a late-night snack. A Fury who appeared to be the leader stepped forward to address the half-bloods.
"Your father thinks he can break an oath he forced my master into without consequences, simply because he is king of the gods. Unfortunately for you, Thalia Grace, that is not how things work. You will face the consequences of your father's arrogance."
Three of the group seemed very confused about the Fury's statement, while the satyr just trembled as he stared at the Fury Alecto. Shaking uncontrollably, the girl took a step away from her three friends. Quietly, under her breath, she told them, "When I attack, I need you three to run across the top of the hill. Once over the border, you will be safe from the monsters." The boy, who had looked like the leader, immediately protested, saying, "Thalia, there is no way I'm leaving you to fight an army of monsters by yourself. I will fight with you, as a team, like we always do." "Luke, there isn't a lot of time. You need to get Annabeth across the border. You know Grover won't be able to fend off the monsters by himself. You need to protect Annabeth like we promised we would. Once you get across the border, run for help while I hold them off," Thalia said. Luke looked like he wanted to protest, but one look from Thalia's electric blue eyes told him it was not open for discussion. He nodded sadly and grabbed Annabeth's hand before readying himself to sprint across the hill. Thalia took out what looked like a canister of mace before it transformed into a deadly celestial bronze spear. She slapped the bracelet on her wrist, which sprang into a terrifying shield with the head of the Gorgon Medusa as a design. Even the monsters flinched at the sight of it. Thalia took a few deep breaths to calm herself. She was quite sure she would not survive long enough for help to arrive. But she knew it was her that the monsters were after. Whatever it was that her father had done had brought the monsters to her group. It had not been Annabeth or Luke's parents. She would not let her friends die for something they had no part in. "Now!" she yelled as she jumped forward, slamming her spear into the eye of the nearest Cyclops. Her friends sprinted toward the hill and across the border, just as Thalia thought they'd be able to do. The monsters were here for her and her alone. As she fought, she could feel herself tiring, as there were simply too many monsters for her to ward off alone. She had killed a dozen at least, including the Fury Tisiphone. After impaling another hellhound with her spear, a Cyclops that had snuck behind her and swatted her with the giant club it carried. Thalia flew several feet into an empusa, which slammed a dagger into her stomach before knocking her back into the feet of Alecto. Thalia knew her wounds were fatal. Her vision was already starting to blur, and she felt herself about to lose consciousness. Refusing to give the monsters the satisfaction of seeing her show fear, she defiantly stared at Alecto, refusing to pass out as the Fury prepared to stab a dagger into the young demigod's heart. Just then, a massive crack of thunder shook the skies. The monsters quickly thought they were seconds from being sent to Tartarus for a visit to reform, but when the lightning followed the thunder, it was not sent at the monsters, but at the daughter of Zeus herself. A split second before the lightning hit her, the bolt was stopped in midair. The monsters were frozen in place, evil smiles still on their faces as they thought they had succeeded in slaying the demigod. Out of the shadow of a nearby tree stepped a man, 6'4", large and well-defined muscles under his pitch-black armor, long and messy jet-black hair, pulsing silver and black eyes, and the ever-noticeable canines barely poking out of his mouth. The man walked toward the demigod and shook his head. Zeus was willing to break the ancient laws to turn his child into a tree, but refused to do so 5 minutes earlier to save his daughter's life. Despite how he felt about Zeus, he knew this demigod had a good heart, even if her father did not share the trait. She sacrificed herself so her friends would be safe. He also knew that she needed to survive in order to be the child of the prophecy. If she was not the child, then it would go to the next oldest child of the big three, which happened to be a secret daughter of Hades. But Perseus's father had told him that the daughter of Hades would not be able to make the right choices to fulfill the prophecy and save the world from the Titan Lord. The man walked forward, released his hold on time for just the girl, and pulled her out from under the lightning bolt that was inches from her body. The girl, Thalia, was still only half conscious, and she groaned weakly from her place in the grass. Perseus looked the girl over and saw the fatal wound in her stomach, along with a cracked vertebra and 3 broken ribs she had sustained from the fight. He placed his hands over the wound in her stomach and sent a blast of dark energy into her. She became coated in an aura of black before it dissipated, leaving her body healed and wound-free. The girl's eyes shot open, and she looked straight into the eyes of the man in front of her. She scrambled back, terrified that she had died and was now face to face with her uncle Hades, who had sent the army of monsters to kill her. "Who the Hades are you?" she stuttered out. In response, the man just chuckled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "My name is not important. What is important is what I need to say. Your father was going to turn you into a tree in order to stop you from dying. He did it to prevent your soul from going to the underworld, where your uncle Hades would most certainly have had you tortured for eternity just for being your father's daughter." At those words, Thalia became scared and furious. It wasn't her fault she was born, or who her father was. Noticing her look, Perseus said sternly, "Do not judge your uncle Hades so quickly. Your father has committed more injustices against him over the millennia than one could even count. He has killed many of his children and lovers for no other crime than they were his. He has refused to let him join the council of the gods, singling him out as the only child of Kronos and Rhea not to be included." Thalia had a look of understanding on her face, but was understandably pissed he had tried to kill her, something Perseus didn't blame her for. "Now, the reason I am here is to tell you important information. There is a prophecy about the end of the gods' rule that predicts a child of the big three, Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades, will make a choice that will decide whether or not the gods survive or the Titans take control again. If you had turned into a tree, the role would fall to another who would not be able to make the right choice. You are going to be the child of the prophecy, Thalia. This is part of why I saved you, because I know you can make the right choice. The other part is I saw what you just did to save your friends. Any 12-year-old willing to give up her life to save others has my respect any day of the week." Thalia was utterly overwhelmed. She felt somewhat dizzy from the information overload she'd just received. Noticing this, Perseus continued, "Do not worry yourself with everything, because you are not going to be doing this alone. I am going to help you. But you have a choice to make. The first is to accept this great responsibility, but you must first swear on the river Styx to tell nobody of me. You never met me, you don't know me, and I did not save you from the lightning bolt or the monster army. Option 2 is I put you back to sleep and paste you under the bolt where you get turned into a tree. I know the options aren't ideal, but to alleviate some of your concerns, I, Perseus, swear on the river Styx that everything I do for Thalia Grace will be for her benefit and for the safety and protection of her and those that she loves. I swear never to harm her or those she cares about, and to never be deceitful in the things I tell her or ask her to do." Thunder boomed overhead, sealing the oath, and Thalia's jaw dropped at everything he'd just told her. She was scared, angry, upset, but most of all, confused. She looked up at Perseus and said just one word. "Why?" He looked at her and told her in a serious tone, "Because I know you can do it. I know you have a good heart, and the only one that has what is needed to have the prophecy end successfully. I do this because the Olympians are too concerned with their personal lives to realize their fate is dependent on the demigods. Without you and the others, the gods would lose control of the world to the Titans, and Western civilization would fall. I cannot have you talk about me because I am not supposed to exist. I am the result of something bad happening to someone good. One day you will hear my full story. Until then, I'm asking you to trust me that I want to help you." Thalia sat there dumbfounded for several minutes. She didn't know what to do. She didn't really want the responsibility of saving the world on her shoulders, but she also knew she couldn't let the world fall because she was too scared to step up and fulfill her responsibility. She also knew she had no desire whatsoever to become a tree. She took a deep breath and stated, "I, Thalia Grace, daughter of Zeus, swear on the river Styx to accept the role of being the child of the prophecy. I swear I will never reveal anything about the meeting with Perseus today or any other day we meet, and I swear to accept his help in aiding me with the prophecy." Thunder boomed overhead once again, sealing her oath. Perseus looked down at Thalia and smiled a wide grin. She gasped when she saw his large canine teeth. She wanted to ask why they were so large, but decided she had enough shocking and disturbing news for one day, and that question could wait for another day. "What large teeth you have, Grandma?" Instead, she looked at Perseus and said, "So what do we do about all the monsters? And how do I explain I avoided the lightning bolt?" "Oh, them? Don't worry about them." Perseus waved his hand. A shadow formed behind each of the monsters before impaling them with a pointed shadow that looked much like a spear. Thalia's jaw hit the ground. She had no idea how someone could have that much power. It was clear that Perseus was a god, but she couldn't figure out why she'd never heard of him. She decided to worry about that later. "As for the lightning bolt, I just need you to go lay under it again, but turn to the side so that when I release my hold on it, it will look like you rolled out of the way." Thalia nodded her head in understanding, although to be honest, she understood very little about what happened that day. All she knew was that she now had the responsibility of saving everyone and the literal weight of the world on her shoulders. But on the bright side, she somehow knew she could trust Perseus. She knew almost nothing about him, other than he was ridiculously powerful, but he swore on the Styx he was on her side, and, oath or not, she believed him. On top of that, he saved her. Without him, she'd be a god's damned tree. Gee, thanks, dear old Dad. Before she could go lay under the bolt, Perseus gently grabbed her arm. He waved his hand over her bracelet, and a pendant of a wolf appeared. She looked confusedly at him. "That is a way for you to contact me. It is invisible to everyone besides you and I, or anyone else I gave a pendant to, which is only one other person. If you hold it and pray to me, I will come to speak to you, or come to your aid in the case of an emergency. Also, pull on the pendant." She did, and a midnight black bow appeared in her hands, and a full quiver of arrows on her back. The quiver is enchanted so that it never runs out of arrows. You have to survive if you were to fulfill the prophecy. This weapon will help protect you, as I will not always be able to. I suppose you can think of me as your patron, so you are my champion. I will work with you to help you save yourself and the rest of the world. Plus, now that you're my champion, I will randomly give you some pretty cool shit when you need it. If you need something, just ask, and I'll do my best to help you." Thalia nodded and gave him a small smile. She went under the bolt and waited for his signal. He nodded, and she rolled to the right, the bolt missing her by about a foot. Thalia then acted injured and groggy as she got up and ran over the border. As she did, she couldn't help but chuckle at how quickly everything in her life can change. I mean, she hadn't even made it to the camp yet, and she somehow had acquired a patron god to guide her. It was a huge responsibility he had put on her shoulders, but she felt proud he chose her to be the one he thought could do it, and she was determined to succeed. Moments later, in the void, a portal opened near the throne room, and out stepped Perseus, directly in front of his father, the creator of the universe itself, Chaos. Chaos had a proud smile on his face, as he had just watched his son expertly handle the assignment given to him. He managed to save the daughter of Zeus, gain her trust, protect his secrecy, and become her patron, all within a span of about 30 minutes. Perseus walked up to his father, who pulled him into a tight hug. Long gone were the days when Perseus would bow to his father, something Chaos did not like. No son should ever feel the need to bow to his father, despite what most Olympians may think. Once out of the embrace, Chaos's face developed a serious and almost worried expression. "Come with me, son. We have much to speak about," he stated seriously. Perseus followed his father into the throne room, taking a seat in his throne, which was right next to his father's. Once seated, Chaos looked around for a moment before snapping his fingers, causing a bubble of dark energy to expand within the throne room, until it sealed the room from the inside, blocking out any chance of being interrupted or overheard by anyone. Perseus gulped nervously. He knew whatever his father wanted to speak of was extremely important, as the only other time he'd done this was when Chaos and Lupa explained the circumstances of his conception and birth. "Son, it is time for you to know what is to come. I have told you of a great threat that will come to Earth, where you will be the deciding factor in whether the age of the Olympian gods will continue or end abruptly," Chaos said in a dead serious tone of voice. Perseus looked slightly confused before responding. "Yes, father, isn't that what I was doing on Earth not 45 minutes ago?" Perseus assumed he was talking about the Titan Lord Kronos rising out of Tartarus and rallying the other Titans in an effort to regain rule of the world. "No, son, that is but a schoolyard fight compared for what is to come," Chaos said seriously, before having a little chuckle while he replied. "Son, even after 2.5 millennia, I still see you have no idea of the power you possess. If you wanted to, you could teleport down to Earth and massacre every Titan alive with little to no trouble at all." His father became serious again before continuing. "You are a primordial god, a son of the Creator, trained by me your entire life. None of your brothers and sisters had the training you had. You are my youngest son, but also my favorite. Rescuing your mother that fateful day all those years ago turned out to be one of the best things I've ever done." Perseus felt himself blush a little in embarrassment, as his father told him how much he cared for him. The man had, indeed, created the entire universe, but he was one of the best things he'd ever done. Chaos continued his story. "I have no doubt the daughter of Zeus will succeed in defeating the Titan Lord, especially with you helping her to do so. But, alas, that is the easy part. After the first Titan War, when Zeus and his siblings dethroned their father and cast him into Tartarus, what followed next?" Perseus answered quickly. "My sister Gaia bred with my brother Tartarus to create the Gigantes." "Exactly. But Gaia is one of my most intelligent children. She will not try the same move twice. She has a plan against which the Olympians have almost no hope. That one small piece of hope, my son, is you." Perseus's mind began to race with possible plans or scenarios in which Gaia would be sure to defeat the Olympians. Suddenly his eyes shot wide open. "One of my brothers or sisters is going to join her, aren't they? Not one. As of right now, she already has 3 other primordial gods ready to join her in taking over the Earth. She thinks she has 4, but she is wrong. One is my spy. You are my favorite son, and she is my favorite daughter. She would never betray me, even if her husband would." Perseus paled, and his mouth dropped open, and he got a feeling he had never truly felt before in his entire existence. Fear. "But father, even if I can defeat more than one primordial god, I can't fight more than one at once, let alone 4. Chaos sighed. "Like I said, son, you have no clue to the power you contain. But you are right. You cannot take 4 at once, even with the weak Olympians helping you, which is why I am working on a plan of my own. When the time comes, you will know how to defeat them." Perseus nodded in understanding, though he still had doubts. If there was one thing he was sure of, it was that he trusted his father. "Who are the 3 that you know of that have joined Gaia?" he asked, wondering what type of power he was up against. Chaos gave a depressed sigh as he responded. "Erebus, Tartarus, and Aurea have joined up with Gaia so far." Perseus nodded, but he was very nervous. Erebus, Tartarus, and Gaia were some of the most powerful primordial gods. He instantly knew Nyx was his father's spy. He always talked fondly of her, and Perseus had wished to meet her some day. He wanted to know his siblings, but could not, as if word got to Gaia, she would find a way to get to him if she knew he opposed her. "You still have time, but you also have a lot of work to do before this battle comes. It is vital that Kronos is defeated without tiring out the Olympians too much. We will need them in the war with Gaia as well. Gaia's plan is truly brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. She will resurrect her giant children and wage war with Olympus. The Olympians would most likely be able to defeat them and her alone with the help of demigods. But when the war is at its peak, she plans to unleash the other 3 primordials against the Olympians. They would stand no chance. After the Titan War is won, Apollo's oracle will release the next great prophecy about the giants in Gaia. For the most part, other than Gaia, because she is Mother Earth, primordial gods are beyond the power of the oracles, so they will not be mentioned, leaving the Olympians blind to her true plans." Perseus sat on his throne, nodding his head as he took in all the information his father was giving him. He knew this would be a near impossible task, but he was also going to do everything in his power to achieve it. He would not let harm come to his mother. Or Zoe. The thought of her being injured or killed nearly made him rip the armrest straight off his throne. After the past millennia, he had visited her as much as he could. They both cared for each other deeply. He knew he loved her, and he knew she loved him. Of course, it was difficult, since she was a huntress, the lieutenant of the hunt, to be exact, essentially Artemis's right hand. Despite the difficulties, he visited her as often as he could get away from the hunt. That had been happening more and more frequently as the years progressed. And yet, it still wasn't enough. They both longed to see each other more. They both wished for the day they wouldn't have to use their little cocoon of darkness to block off Artemis from sensing them together. Perseus would often morph into his wolf form when he missed her and join the wolves at the hunters' camp or on their hunts, always taking special care to avoid Artemis's eye so as to not be noticed. Although when Artemis was not looking, Zoe would smirk and laugh at him running around in his wolf form. He didn't know what to consider her. His girlfriend? It didn't sound right, as she was a hunter, but they obviously weren't friends either. All he knew was that if they were still alive after the war with Gaia, he would make her his. She loved the hunt, but she loved him more. He was sure of it. Otherwise, she wouldn't see him behind Artemis's back. Perseus was so deeply involved in his thoughts of Zoe that he didn't notice his father smirking at him from his throne. After a moment, chaos cleared his throat, causing Perseus to look up and notice the smirk. He immediately blushed bright red, as he knew his father had seen what he was thinking about. "I think it's time, son," Chaos told him seriously. Perseus looked confused. "Time for what?" "Time for you to tell your girlfriend your story. Your whole story," he replied. Perseus was shocked. He didn't expect his father to ever let him tell anyone before the war. When he realized his father had called Zoe his girlfriend, his face immediately went bright red again. "She's not my girlfriend, father. We're just friends," he tried to argue. Chaos snorted. "Yeah, I spend most of my time when I visit friends surrounding us in a cocoon of energy so we can make out." Perseus's blush, if possible, deepened. Chaos just started to laugh at him. "I'm not telling you to go tell her right now. I'm just saying when you feel the moment is right, you have my permission to tell her everything. Oh, and your mother gives you a permission as well." Perseus's eyes widened. "What? How does she even know about Zoe? I never mentioned her other than the first time we met, so she would back up the story I gave her." Chaos just laughed harder. Son, you can't possibly think your mother doesn't watch you just as much as I do when you go to Earth. Come on, you're a baby boy. Of course she keeps a watchful eye on you. I'm over 2,000 years old. I'm not a baby, Perseus injected, whining, but Chaos just laughed even harder. Perseus figured it would only get worse if he continued to whine, so he just turned his head, mumbling about stalker parents and no privacy. When Chaos calmed down, he looked at Perseus and said in a more serious tone, "Just so you know for future reference, you are a primordial god. You are above the power of the Fates, as they are actually your nieces, daughters of your sister Ananke, and you are also beyond the power of the Oracle of Delphi." Perseus had no idea where that came from, or why his father had said it to him, but if there was one thing he knew, it was that when his father told him something in a serious tone like that, it was important, and that one day he would absolutely need to know it. So, instead, he just looked at his father and nodded. "I'm going to visit Mother. I'll be back tonight, Father." Chaos just nodded and smiled at his son. "Go. I'm sure she misses you." With that, Perseus snapped his fingers, transformed into a wolf, and jumped in the abyss of the vortex.